Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. So, hello, and welcome to Mike Weisbach joining me on It's Been How Long? Hey, Mike, thanks for being part of this podcast adventure of mine.
Well, thank you so much for doing it. I've been watching some of the others, and they've been really kind of interesting and really kind of cool to see where everyone's come.
Yeah,
Well, it's good, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So thanks for agreeing to be on. So, here we are, 43 years post graduation, or maybe 43 and a half for you. And what are you up to these days? What are you doing these days?
well, now I am actually living in Columbus, Ohio. I'm a professor at Ohio State. You're actually in my office now, and I teach finance, and I specialize in corporate finance and private equity if anyone's kind of interested in that stuff. And I've been, I don't know, I guess I should sort of fill you in a little bit. I was in the class of 80, but my family moved to Michigan in 1979. So I had to basically miss senior year. And I started at U of M in Ann Arbor right after 1970 in the fall of 1979. But I was able to I actually was a graduation in Cherry Hill in 1980, and I must say I've only been back to Cherry Hill once since then for a wedding. And aside from that, I've been living in lots of different places. So I lived in Michigan and in Boston and in Rochester, New York, then Tucson, Arizona, then Champaign, Illinois, and now Columbus, Ohio. And I think we're here for a while. So anyway,
Oh,
that's
that's great. That's
very,
great.
yeah.
So, what do you do for fun out
Well,
there in Ohio?
I've been one of the things I've been doing. I took up maybe 10 years ago was cycling because I it was literally on a lark. My wife told me I needed a new bike because I was riding a 25-year-old one, and so I went to the store and they say, oh, you get a 10% discount if you ride in this cancer ride Peloton called Pelotonia, which is a giant thing in Columbus, Ohio. And so sure, anything for a 10% discount. And so I did it, and then the next year I did it again, and I rode 100 miles, and then now it's become part of my life. And so every weekend I have a group of very nice friends who they ride and to get in shape for the Pelotonia. And it was a couple of weeks ago, and now of course we're going to go back and ride again this Sunday, and then the next week. And basically, it keeps me in shape and is a fun thing to do.
How
And
long is the Pelotonia ride? Is it
uh,
like over a day,
no,
or?
it's one day, and you go 100 miles.
Oh,
And
okay.
so you kind of you start riding at 7 and you're done by 3 or 4 or something like that. I go slowly. A really good rider would be done by noon, but anyway, I go slowly. So I compare notes with Rob Thurston because he does
Yeah,
these time. And so
that's great. That's great. Did you bike back in high school?
no, I never did anything like that. As everyone who's seeing this knows, I was the biggest nerd in the whole class and didn't do anything athletic. And I played trombone in the marching band, and I was on the chess team and did that stuff like that. But basically I didn't do anything athletic. But once it's a certain point in time when you get to be our age, you kind of taking care of your body is as important
Yeah.
as anything else in your life. And so I decided I would have to do it. And so I go to a personal trainer twice a week, and try to ride at least once a week. And a typical Sunday would be, I don't know, 35 or 40 miles, but then we work up to 100 miles for this one ride in early August. So
Oh, that's great. That's
I,
great. So I would beg to differ because I think I did marching band for one year, and between the uniform and marching and the heat, that's pretty athletic.
I guess. Yeah. That's true. That's true. That's true. I remember. I forgot what instrument. Were you a flute?
I
There?
started out as flute, but I quickly switched because they asked for they needed French horn players, and
Yeah.
there were so many flute players, so I gave up the flute and I started playing French horn. And we marched with a little, I don't know what it was. It was a tiny little tuba is the only thing I could call it, but
Yep. I remember those things, and yeah, there was always a shortage of trombone players, so they didn't want
yeah.
me to. Um, I don't know if you guys remember Bob Perone and Joe Leonard. They were the other two trombone players in our class.
I
So
think I vaguely remember that. So you chess team and then marching band, no other clubs or organizations?
uh, God, I don't remember. There must have been,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
I don't remember.
Did you have
But
a job back in high school?
nope,
No.
nope, I
How
didn't.
about in the summers? Anything in the summers?
Um, well, in high school, I would go to camp in high school.
Oh, okay.
In college, I had a job. One summer in college, I went to Yellowstone National Park, which was just wonderful. And the other summers, I hung out in Ann Arbor, which is a wonderful place to be if you haven't been there. So
Oh no, I have. It's very nice. Very nice. So from graduation, you went to Michigan, you majored in
I was a math major. If you, those of you who remember me know I was sort of really into that in high school. Now, I mean, my students here at OSU, they can't imagine I was ever good at math because I'm terrible at it now.
oh,
But compared to the young people, but back then I was pretty good, and I ended up going into economics, and I was able to get into MIT, where I did my PhD.
okay.
My first job was at Rochester,
Oh, okay.
all the way and where I met my wife and had my first two kids. And then we moved all the way across the country to Tucson, Arizona, where I taught at U of A for 5 years. And then to Champaign, Illinois, where my third son was born, my third child, my second son. Uh, and I was there for 9 years. And then
Oh.
in
And
2000,
Champaign was the University of Illinois?
yeah, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. It's called
Okay.
UIC. And we lived in Champaign for 5 years and then Urbana for 4 years. And then we moved to Columbus, Ohio in 2008. We actually lived in a town called Bexley, which is it's a little bit like Cherry Hill. It's older than Cherry Hill, but it's sort of has really good schools. And that's where my kids went to high school. And then right before COVID, we moved to a really nice condo basically in downtown Columbus. It's called the Short North, if anyone knows the area. But basically, it's the area where the restaurants and art galleries and coffee shops are. And so we really like it there. So we were fortunate to move there right before COVID hit, which was nice.
So did you have a high school sweetheart?
Nope,
Nope.
nope, nope.
And you said you met your wife where again?
We met on my first job, so at Rochester. So
Okay.
she is from Amy is her name. She's from Syracuse, New York.
Oh, okay.
And we will be married 34 years on Sunday, I believe.
Okay. Well, that's great. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Um,
And
so you've obviously had the opportunity to travel, not just clearly in the States, but out of the States. And in fact, one of your travels was part of the uh, precipitating event for me to say I wanted to do something beyond typing information to each other over text. Was I wanted to talk to people in person because we had an interaction where you and then someone from my present day were together in what do you say, Hong Kong, and
right. I
trying
was
to figure out
visiting
how my worlds collide. Yeah, so you definitely travel.
yeah, I was visiting a university in Hong Kong. One of the things that's nice about this professor gig is that you can visit other universities and the especially the schools, especially in Asia, they love to have you come for a few weeks and just have you be part of their community. And so I was doing this at a school in Hong Kong. And this school, one of the things they like to do is they like to go hiking. And Hong Kong is a really neat city because it's a giant city. It's very compressed and everything. But then not right outside the city is wonderful mountains and hikes and everything. And so we were there. And then a finance professor from UNC, who it turns out you knew, Paolo Fuglieri, was in Hong Kong. And so they said, come along. And so what they do on these hikes is you take a group picture at the end, and then everyone posts it to Facebook, and then I posted to Facebook, and you contacted me and said, how in the world do you know Paolo Fuglieri, right? Because he's at UNC, and so yeah, that was the weird. You freaked me out on that one. So yeah, I guess that got you thinking about these things. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So beyond Hong Kong, where have you been?
Oh, I've been lots of places. I've been to Europe any number of times. I was just in Switzerland, giving at this conference in Lausanne. I go to London. I try to go every year. And
You gonna bring your bike and go visit Rob?
I would love to. I would love to. I
I
have a
bet you he could hook you up with a bike. You probably don't
I
have to bring it.
should try and do that next year. There's a conference I like to go to in June, May or June or something. It's there, and so let me see if I can do that next year. That would be great fun. And yeah, so I'm taking my wife to Sicily in a few weeks. We're going to go for 3 weeks, and so we go to there's a company called Overseas Adventure Travel, where basically you don't have to plan your trip. You just have to like tell them where you're going and sign up for a trip, and you get your flights and you just show up and they take you all over the country or whatever, which is quite nice. And we've done that to 4 or 5 different countries, and we really enjoy it. Because some people love to plan these long trips and we don't, so we just kind of go and so hopefully it won't be too hot, but
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. That's great. Do you have a favorite I mean, clearly you enjoy going back to London, but would you have a favorite?
I love the trip to Australia
Oh,
right before COVID. Literally, the fall, December of 2019, I was in Australia for a long time and Hong Kong, and then we get back to Columbus, move into the condo, and then all of a sudden the world shuts down, and that was quite fun.
no.
So I actually have I have a lot of doctoral students, so I maintain a close contact with them, and so which is quite nice because I can go visit them in all different parts of the world, and so that's another nice
That's
feature.
cool.
Yeah.
So,
So
through all these travels, have you met anybody famous?
I don't know. Famous people. Um, Not really. I know lots of famous economists. I know all the famous economists. But so if you were an economist, I could tell you lots of names, but given that you're not, they wouldn't mean much to you. But Larry Summers I knew pretty well as a student. He's
Okay.
famous. And
Yeah.
so like the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors right now, CC Rouse. I used to hang out when I was a grad student. She was an undergraduate, but hung out with the graduate students, and so it was pretty clear she was going to go far.
Okay.
And,
Well, that's cool. So, are there any folks that you're friends with at East that you're still in touch with? Like you said, you kind of things kind of dropped for you when you left for Michigan, but
I saw Ellen Bass once or twice in Philadelphia. She moved back to Drexel. Ellen was a year ahead of
none of
us,
us, yeah.
so I don't know if you know
Oh, I know
her.
Ellen. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, so she was she was a UVA person, right? And then she was on the faculty there, I think. And then she moved back to Drexel because she wanted to be with her family in Philadelphia. So she's in Philadelphia right now. I don't really nobody from East so much. I saw Eric Muller once on a trip to UNC. And I really lost. What happened was we moved to Michigan in 1979, and we just lost touch with everybody. And
Yeah.
Facebook has been really good to reconnect. So
Yeah.
we reconnected, and there's like a group of Cherry Hill East people that I kind of feel like some of them I feel like I know better now than I did. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I see their posts and everything. So
Yeah. Do you have any standout memories from East that you're like, this was a high point or this was a real low point or anything you can think of?
I don't know. I remember we did Fiddler on the Roof when what was there our junior year, and I was in the orchestra. I thought that was just great, and marching band, and I don't know. I
Did you have
remember
a
Mr.
sorry, go ahead.
Drew. I remember Mr. Drew's math class. I thought he was great, and he was probably my favorite teacher there.
Yeah, he wrote in my yearbook, Kara, sorry I couldn't answer your last 200 questions.
Is that right? Oh my God. Is he
I'm
still
sure I'm sure you were in one of those classes of ours.
probably?
Um uh so do you have a teacher or a class that influenced you?
I like his class. Was it linear algebra? That one?
Could have been. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Mr. Smythe, I remember him, and Dr. Goldstein, right? They taught together, and I don't think they liked each other, but they and I remember the principal. Was it Bernie? Bernie Shapiro, right? And we used to cheer. I don't know if you remember when when we were kids, the Flyers were really good, and the
Yeah.
goalie was getting
Bernie
Bernie,
Perrant.
right? And so everyone would cheer Bernie, 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 right? And so that we used to cheer that for the principal, Bernie. You remember that?
I that is not a memory I recall.
Oh, and I went to did you go with the band to Switzerland or freshman year? That was
So
really, I loved
yes.
that, yeah. And yes, and so literally I was in Geneva Airport and Lausanne and Montreux a month ago. I was like, wow, I haven't been there since freshman year of high school. So
Wow.
that was quite a lot of fun. They arranged that, and remember they sold this little buy a buck thing where you would sell people would pay you $1 and then the store would donate $1 to and
Yeah. I didn't end up going on that trip, but I have discussed that trip with Debbie Arish, who recalls it fondly, as did Deborah Smead. So
yeah, I was pretty good friends with both of them and still on Facebook with both of them. I did Debbie Arish is really into the clarinet still. I mean, she's always playing in orchestras and stuff. I must admit I played trombone in college a little bit and then dropped out. And my kids don't believe that I ever played it, but there's an old trombone in our house still that my wife wouldn't wanted me to get rid of, and I refused, so we still have it. But yeah, and
that's great. So, is there anything that you wish classmates knew about you back in high school, or something that you wish they know about you now?
oh God, I never I wish you told me this in advance. I would have thought of answers, but I don't know. I was a real nerd in high school, and I think everyone knew that. And I'm maybe a little bit less of a nerd now, and so I still try to keep in shape and have a family, and yeah, and, I don't know, just try and enjoy life, right? I love my
Absolutely.
and and my students, and it's a blast being in front of the room. I mean, academic politics can be as bad
Oh.
as say it is, but yes, but aside from that, it's
So do you like getting up there and I mean, you're a performer when you're a teacher.
it's a blast. You're up in front of the group. You're talking about stuff. People are actually listening to you, and if they're not, that's not good. But it's the bad part is like the grading, and especially dealing with complaints about grading and things like that. And if you have to flunk a student out, that's awful. But I love to be in front of them and get to know the students and see them do well, and then stay in touch with them. And I literally was on the email an hour ago, introducing one old student to another old student because he's going to be visiting Taiwan in the summer, and so she will hook him up and with people at the university there. So I love doing stuff like that.
Oh,
And,
that's great. That's great. So we're back in 1980, 1979 for you, but and you just graduated and you're looking out these 40 odd years. Is this where you saw yourself, Professor
I had
Weisbach?
no idea. When I graduated high school, I had no idea. I just went to college and I wanted to sort of do something. My father, of course, wanted me to go to law school, and literally, he wasn't above bribery. So I got a pair of skis for agreeing to take the LSAT and apply to law school. And I think I filled out the application, and then one day they called me and they said, there's an optional essay. Why don't you write it? And I said, well, it's optional, therefore I don't have to write it, right? And she said, but every other applicant this year has written the essay. Don't you want to write it too? I said, no. And so I didn't write it, and because I didn't want to go to law school. I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. And I just but
I
I
think you landed on your feet.
yeah, economics was a good field to go into for me, especially at the time, because it became an important area, and I kind of and somehow lucked into going into corporate finance, which has been an important area because I graduated during the takeover boom of the 1980s, and there was a lot of research there. And then private equity has been gigantic in the last 20 years, and so I teach a course on that. It's nice to teach a course that everyone wants to know about. right?
That's good.
If you taught basic statistics or basic accounting, that would be kind of much harder. But teaching a course in startups and buyouts and things like that, everyone's interested in them, and so it's kind of fun to teach. And so,
That's great.
yeah.
So, if you could have designed your dream job back in 1980, 79, whenever it was, what would it have been?
I have no idea. I don't think I knew, right? I mean, I think like half of the class, parents, oh, you must be a doctor, right? You want to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? And so if you had asked me in 1979, I would have said, oh, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, because that's what my parents programmed me to say. But, I think to be fair to them, in by my freshman or sophomore year, kind of my father actually suggested, well, be a business school professor might be a good thing for you to do. And so even though he then wanted me to be a lawyer, but anyway, so that's what so I think that was a good, and I think that I followed the path I kind of thought of maybe my junior year in college. Although I didn't know I wanted to be an academic. I just figured going into economics was kind of a good thing, because you can get a real job as an economist and not just a professor job. So I think it was a good thing to do.
It
So,
certainly worked out for you. Did you enjoy high school?
um, I guess so. I liked college much better, and I like grad school better than college. So I really like grad school, but high school was fine. It was fun. I like going to the games, and I remember we had a good football team, and I was in AZA. Were you?
Yeah.
You're in
I was in BBG. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was active in that with, I don't know, Rob Gordon and Dan Wayne fan and all those guys I haven't spoken to in ages. I hope they're on Facebook and they will see this video. So if you are, hello. And
Yeah.
uh,
So, if you had a piece of advice to give your 18-year-old self, or maybe you gave it to your 18-year-old kids, what would it be?
I told him not to go through life too quickly. I sort of zoomed through it a little too quickly. So I should have taken a little time off and been a little more mature when I started my first job. And I guess my son is listening to me, because he's 22 and he's still got 2 more years of college to go. So he's taking it slowly, which I hope is good for him, because he's and yeah, I graduated college at 21 and got my PhD at 25. So I was like way too fast, and I was really young. So,
And oh, so just as a quick sidetrack, is you're a grandpa.
yep, I'm a grandpa. So, those of you who I guess we're all the same age, but being a grandpa is really great. It's better than being a parent, because being a parent, you're constantly worrying about everything under the sun. I mean, their health, their schools, their this, their that. And whereas a grandpa, you just want to go and enjoy how cute they are and play with them. And as I told one of my colleagues this morning, if they visit and they wake you up at 3 in the morning and you're a grandpa, once or twice a year, it's not so bad. But every night is not so much fun. But yeah, so it's really cute. And unfortunately, they don't live real close. They live
Hmm.
in Rhode Island, and
Yeah.
so we see them as often as we can, but not often as much as we like. And we also have two other kids. One lives as I mentioned, he's still a student at Indiana, so he's in Bloomington, Indiana, which is about a 3.5 hour drive from where we are. And our daughter is 30 and living in Chicago. So
Yeah,
she loves living in Chicago. It's a great city.
it is.
Yeah. So she likes that. And so,
Oh, that's great. So we're calling this next part the fast and furious finish. Doesn't have to be fast, doesn't have to be furious.
okay.
But just a few questions here. So did you have a favorite TV show? Did you have a favorite movie or a favorite book from back in your high school day, our high school days?
I used to love Happy Days and MASH. My wife and I still watch MASH every night. It's like ridiculous how amusing that one is. Movie I can't think of. Was there other things you mentioned?
If you had a book or I
Oh,
mean
I loved Catch 20. I still reread Catch 22 every couple of years because when you work at a state university, you like that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy because it's like the issues are the same. And if ever you were any of you work for government jobs, reread Catch 22, and it will seem vaguely familiar with all of the craziness that goes on in these organizations. I love the flyers, by the way. I was
Okay.
a nutty. I still remember. This was before high school, but like the best time of your youth was when we beat the Russians and we won the Stanley Cup. Those are the two highlights of my youth. So
Did you become a Columbus Blue Jackets fan since you live there, or are you still rooting for the Flyers?
I root for the Flyers, although I must admit I don't actually know who's on the team anymore.
Yeah.
So but the 76ers I'm still pretty into. And so it's really weird because you always root for the teams that you liked when you were a kid. And so it was weird because when I moved to Boston, I was perfectly fine rooting for the Red Sox because they weren't a rival of the Phillies, but I could never root for the Celtics because they were the hated enemy of the 76ers. And I was there for, oh my God, all the Larry Bird years, which was very painful.
Wow.
They beat
Yeah.
us times. And so, and
Yeah. So did you have a favorite musical group or a genre of music or an
I
artist that you
think
liked?
jazz at the time. And so I like jazz. I've always liked jazz a lot. I
Oh,
played
okay.
jazz band at high school. I played in the jazz band in college, actually, for a year or two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, somehow I got into the University of Michigan jazz band, and which was very fun. It was a lot of fun, and I like that here. And
So that's got to up your cool factor for your kids that you played in a jazz band in college.
no, you have kids, you know that nothing ups your cool factor with your kids.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true. Did you have a favorite place to eat or hang out in high school?
God, I don't remember.
Okay. Were you a cowtail bar person or a Ponzio's or any of those?
I don't rem. I remember Ponzios, but I
Yeah.
don't remember. God, sorry, it's been so long since I've been in.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
So yeah, I literally went back for one wedding, and um, it was Lisa Simon's wedding. She was a year ahead of us,
Yeah.
and she married a friend of mine who actually became a famous economist, and he died tragically. But
Mm.
uh, but yeah, I haven't really been back to Cherry Hill. I've been to Philadelphia a bunch of times, but I never quite made it across the river. And
Well, this is usually the part where I show a picture, a yearbook picture, but you actually didn't because you weren't present in
I
1980,
was
didn't
there.
make the yearbook.
Make the yearbook.
So,
I'm
um, and
sorry.
then no, 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 no. And so, one of my other quests is to figure out why we had a Western theme to our yearbook. But you're not going to know that
I did not know
either.
that. I was long gone by the time the yearbook was.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I still graduated. I hope my name's
Yes,
in there, if not a picture, but I don't know. But
yeah. So, lastly, is there anything you want to tell any of our classmates who might be listening?
if any
Any?
of you are in Columbus, Ohio, please let me know. Or if you have kids that go to college here, we have lots of colleges nearby, and so I remember Charlene Sue. She posted on Facebook about her kid who went to one of the schools here. I think it was Otterbein and or Denison maybe, and yeah, but we never quite hooked up because she was posting that she was coming in. But please let us know. It's a great place to live, great place to be, and I really appreciate your doing this, Kara. This is really terrific that you're doing this, and I'm going to sit down one of these days and watch all of the videos that you posted. And so
Uh,
thank
well, thank you. Thanks for spending time with me today, Mike. It's great. And if I find myself out in Ohio, I will for sure give you a call. And then in the meantime, we can message, find out how everything's going.
yeah, great, great, great.
Well, thanks a lot, and you have a good evening.
See you later. See you later. Bye bye.
Take care. Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband, Randy Coughdale, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.